Captain Frank Miller stood on the bridge of the U.S. Intrepid, watching the stars through the large viewing window. The ship hummed quietly around him. It was humanity's newest diplomatic vessel, designed to show the best of what Earth could build. Frank felt proud to command it, even if some aliens called it basic. The year was 2157, and humans had joined the Galactic Coalition only 8 months ago. The coalition included 12 different alien species. Some had been traveling through space for thousands of years. Humans were the new kids, fresh and eager to learn. "Captain, we're picking up signals," said Lieutenant Olivia Martinez from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. 5 ships approaching from Sector 7. Frank straightened his uniform. "Coalition vessels?" "No, sir. They're Zarkonian." The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the Zarkonians. They weren't part of the coalition. They were warriors who bullied smaller species and took what they wanted. Their ships were famous for being fast and deadly. "Open communications when they're in range," Frank ordered, "and alert Earth Command." The Zarkonian ships came into view on the main screen. They were sleek and purple-black, with sharp edges that made them look like predators. The largest ship was twice the size of the Intrepid. "They're hailing us, sir," said Communications Officer Ben Harris. On screen, the face that appeared was gray-blue with ridges along the jawline. Yellow eyes stared at Frank with clear dislike. "I am Admiral Vexthor of the glorious Zarkonian Empire," the alien said. "You have entered space that will soon be ours." Frank kept his voice calm. "Admiral, this is Captain Frank Miller of the Earth vessel Intrepid. We're on a diplomatic mission to Centauri Station. We're not looking for trouble." The Admiral laughed, showing pointed teeth. "Your ship is pathetic. Look at it. Metal hulls and chemical engines. We stopped using those 1,000 years ago." Frank said nothing. Getting angry wouldn't help. "Scans complete, Admiral," said a voice off-screen. "Their weapons are basic projectiles and simple missiles. Their shields can't even stop our smallest guns." Vexthor smiled wider. "Humans, so new to space, so primitive. Your species needs protection. The Zarkonian Empire offers it, for a price. Give us Earth's resources, and we'll make sure no one harms you." Lieutenant Martinez looked up from her screen, her face worried. "Captain," she whispered, "they're scanning everything, not just our weapons." Frank understood what she meant. The Zarkonians were checking Earth's defenses, looking for weaknesses. "Admiral, Earth is a sovereign planet and a member of the Galactic Coalition," Frank said firmly. "We don't need your protection." "The Coalition," Vexthor laughed again. "Those traitors and diplomats. They talk while we act. You have 1 Earth month to agree to our protection. After that," he drew a finger across his throat, a human gesture that surprised Frank. "We've studied your species. You're clever for primitives, but you're no match for us." The screen went dark. "They're moving away, sir," Martinez said. But their scan patterns were strange. They were looking at more than just the Intrepid. I think they were gathering data on Earth's whole defense network. Frank nodded. "Send everything to Earth Command, highest priority. And plot a course home. Maximum speed." As the Intrepid changed direction, Frank looked at the stars again. Humanity had been in space for less than a century. Most alien species had thousands of years of experience. But humans had something special. They adapted quickly. They learned fast. And they never gave up. "Lieutenant," he said to Martinez, "what do you know about the Titan project?" Her eyes widened. "Only rumors, sir. They say it's big. Really big." Frank smiled slightly. "Let's hope it's big enough." The Intrepid accelerated toward Earth, carrying a warning of the storm to come. Dr. Alan Carter wiped sweat from his forehead as he looked up at the massive ship hanging in the lunar construction bay. The artificial gravity was set low to help with building, but he still felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "How's the power grid coming along?" he asked into his communicator. Section 5 is still giving us problems, replied Commander Susan Watson. Her voice sounded tired. We've been working for 20 hours straight. Alan sighed. The U.S. Defender was the biggest ship humans had ever built. Most people on Earth didn't even know it existed. The Titan project had been top secret for 10 years, hidden in this base on the far side of the moon. Do what you can, he said. We just got word from Earth Command. We might not have as much time as we thought. He looked along the massive hull of the Defender. Most alien ships were sleek and curved. This one wasn't pretty. It was blocky and covered in thick armor plates. Where alien ships used energy shields, the Defender used layers of special metals. Where aliens used beam weapons, the Defender had railguns and missile bays. Susan appeared at his side, her work uniform stained with grease. I heard about the Zarkonians, she said. That Captain Miller did well not to start a fight. A fight is coming anyway, Alan replied. He pointed to a group of workers installing a huge gun turret. Is that the number 6 railgun? Susan nodded. Biggest gun ever put on a spaceship. It fires metal slugs at 15% the speed of light. The aliens will laugh at it, Alan said with a small smile, until they realize it goes right through their fancy shields. They walked along a catwalk that ran beside the ship. Below them, engineers worked on engines and weapon systems. Above them, the ship's hull stretched for nearly a mile. What's our status? Alan asked. Susan checked her tablet. Hull is 95% complete. Engines at 82%. Weapons systems 78%. We need at least 3 more months. We might not have 3 months, Alan said. He stopped walking and looked at a wall screen showing news from Earth. The news showed protests outside the Global Council building. People were angry about money being spent on space defense. They didn't know about the Defender yet. They didn't understand the danger. 15 years, Alan said quietly. That's how long we've known they were out there. Susan nodded. Earth's deep space telescopes had detected alien signals 15 years ago. The world governments had started preparing in secret. The Titan project was the biggest part of that preparation. Sir, called a young engineer from below. We've got the fighter bays online. Alan smiled. The Defender wasn't just a warship. It was a carrier, designed to launch smaller ships into battle. Again, an old idea that aliens had moved past. They thought fighters were outdated. Humans knew better. Show me, Alan said. They took an elevator down to a massive hangar inside the ship. Rows of fighter craft sat ready for pilots. They were small, built for speed and surprise attacks. 200 fighters, Susan said proudly. Each one can fly circles around anything the Zarkonians have. Alan's communicator beeped. It was a message from Earth Command, marked urgent. He read it quickly, his face growing serious. What is it? Susan asked. The Intrepid is under attack. 3 Zarkonian ships caught them near Mars. Captain Miller is trying to escape, but he shook his head. They're not waiting a month. Susan realized. No, Alan agreed. They're coming now. He looked around at the incomplete ship, at all the work still to be done. Tell everyone to focus on essential systems only. Engines, weapons, life support. We launch in 72 hours. Susan's eyes widened. Sir, we can't. We have to, Alan cut her off. It's the Defender or nothing. As they hurried back to work, Alan looked at the ship one more time. It wasn't ready. It wasn't perfect. But it was humanity's best hope. Sometimes, he thought, the best weapon isn't the most advanced one. It's the one the enemy doesn't expect. The U.S. Intrepid limped into Earth orbit, its hull scorched and damaged. Captain Frank Miller stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, his uniform still smelling of smoke. Around him, military leaders from around the world watched the screens showing the approaching Zarkonian fleet. They hit us without warning, Frank explained. We managed to escape when their lead ship stopped to destroy Europa Station. General Laura Daniels, head of Earth Defense, frowned deeply. 17 people were on that station. All dead, Frank confirmed. The Zarkonians didn't even try to let them surrender. On the main screen, red dots showed enemy ships moving through the solar system. They had already passed Mars. 6 large warships and 15 smaller vessels, all heading for Earth. What about the coalition? Asked a politician in an expensive suit. They promised to protect us when we joined. Lisa Brown, Earth's ambassador to the coalition, shook her head. I just came from an emergency meeting. They're not coming. Her voice was bitter. 4 member species have suddenly discovered internal problems that require their attention. The others offered to send observers. Observers? General Daniels looked disgusted. To watch us get conquered? I think some of them were threatened by the Zarkonians, Lisa said. Others were probably bribed. Either way, we're on our own. The room fell silent as this news sank in. Earth had joined the coalition expecting allies. Now they faced invasion alone. Not entirely alone, said a new voice. Dr. Alan Carter entered the room, followed by Commander Susan Watson. They both looked exhausted. The Defender is ready, Alan said, or as ready as it can be. General Daniels looked skeptical. Your ship is 3 months ahead of schedule. It's not complete, Susan admitted. We've focused on essential systems only. Engines, weapons, basic life support. About 60% of the planned systems are working. Frank stepped forward. Is it enough to fight? Alan and Susan exchanged looks. Maybe, Alan said. The main railguns work. Half the missile bays are operational. The fighter launch systems are ready, but we only have pilots for about 70 fighters instead of the full 200. General Daniels turned to the screens again. The Zarkonians will reach Earth in 36 hours. How soon can the Defender deploy? 24 hours, Susan said. We're moving it from the moon now. The general nodded slowly. Captain Miller, you've faced these aliens. I'm giving you command of the Defender. Frank straightened. Yes, ma'am. I'd like Lieutenant Martinez as my XO. She knows their tactics better than anyone. Granted. Dr. Carter and Commander Watson will go with you as technical advisors. The general turned to the whole room. Everyone else, prepare Earth's defenses. If the Defender fails, we need to be ready. As the meeting ended, Frank pulled Alan aside. How bad is it really? Alan ran a hand through his messy hair. We had to cut corners. The ship's main computer is running on backup systems. Half the armor plating isn't properly secured. And we've barely tested the main weapons. But it can fight. It can fight. Alan nodded. We built it to take a beating. Even with everything that's missing, it's tougher than anything the Zarkonians have seen before. Frank smiled grimly. Good, because we're going to meet them before they reach Earth. Susan joined them, holding a tablet. We've got a plan for that. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We can use the rocks for cover and to limit their movements. A space ambush, Frank said, impressed. Just like old naval tactics from Earth's oceans. Exactly, Alan agreed. The Zarkonians fight in open space. They've never had to deal with terrain. As they walked to the shuttle that would take them to the Defender, Frank felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Earth's most advanced ship was incomplete and untested. But sometimes the best weapon was the unexpected one. They think we're primitive, he said quietly. Let's show them what primitive humans can do. The U.S. Defender moved silently from its hiding place behind the moon. For the first time, the massive ship entered open space. Its dark gray hull absorbed the distant sunlight. At nearly a mile long, it was twice the size of any ship humans had built before. On the bridge, Captain Frank Miller settled into the command chair. Around him, crew members worked at their stations. Some looked nervous, others determined. All systems online, reported Lieutenant Olivia Martinez from the tactical station. Main engines at 80% capacity. Weapons? Frank asked. Primary railguns charge. Missile bays 1 through 6 ready. Fighter squadrons standing by. Frank nodded. Take us out, Helm. Set course for the asteroid belt. The giant ship moved away from Earth, accelerating slowly. In orbit above the planet, a small group of alien vessels watched with interest. They were observers from the Coalition, sent to monitor the situation. Their communications lit up as they saw the Defender. "Captain," said Communications Officer Ben Harris, "we're receiving transmissions from the Coalition ships." They're laughing. "Sir." Frank wasn't surprised. "Let's hear it." A voice came through the speakers, speaking perfect English but with an odd humming undertone. "Is that their warship? Look at it. So bulky and primitive. Are those physical armor plates? How quaint." Another voice joined in. "They're using chemical rockets for propulsion. I haven't seen those in centuries." A third voice added, "And those must be projectile weapons. They're fighting with thrown rocks. The Zarkonians will destroy them in minutes." Frank turned off the sound. "Let them laugh," he said to his crew. "They don't know what we can do yet." The journey to the asteroid belt took 12 hours. The crew used that time to run final checks on all systems. In the engine room, Commander Susan Watson worked with her team to squeeze extra power from the drives. In the tactical center, Dr. Alan Carter and Lieutenant Martinez mapped out the asteroid field and planned their ambush. "The biggest problem will be their sensors," Alan explained. "Zarkonian ships can detect energy signatures from millions of miles away." Olivia smiled. "That's why we're not using energy shields or beam weapons. Our railguns are mostly mechanical. They can't detect what they don't recognize." As they approached the asteroid belt, alarms sounded through the ship. "Zarkonian fleet detected," called out the sensor operator. "They're moving fast, sir. ETA to engagement, 20 minutes. Frank stood up. "Battle stations. Launch scout fighters. Keep them hidden among the asteroids." Small fighter craft shot out from the Defender's launch base. They were quick and agile, darting between the floating rocks. Their pilots reported back what they saw. 6 large warships, 15 support vessels, Olivia summarized. "Their formation is tight. They're not spreading out." Frank smiled slightly. That was what he had hoped for. The Zarkonians were used to fighting in open space. They didn't know how to use terrain. "Move us behind the largest asteroid cluster," he ordered. "Power down all non-essential systems. Let's disappear." The giant ship slid behind a collection of massive space rocks, its engines going quiet. Only life support and minimal systems remained active. On the Zarkonian flagship, Admiral Vexthor watched his sensor displays with confidence. "Where are the humans hiding?" "Scan the entire belt." His officers worked their controls. "No energy signatures." "Admiral, if they're here, they're powered down." Vexthor laughed. "Cowards. They flee before us. Continue on course to Earth." As the Zarkonian fleet moved deeper into the asteroid belt, they passed right by the hidden Defender. Frank waited until the enemy ships were past them, then gave the order. "All power to engines and weapons. Target their rear ships. Fire when ready." The Defender's railguns charged with a deep hum. Susan's voice came over the comm from engineering. "You've got full power, Captain. Show them what primitive looks like." Frank smiled. "Fire." The railguns erupted, sending massive metal projectiles at incredible speed toward the unsuspecting Zarkonian ships. The battle had begun. The railgun slugs hit the rear Zarkonian ship with devastating force. There was no explosion, just the terrible sound of metal tearing as the projectiles ripped through the alien vessel. The Zarkonian ship's energy shields had done nothing to stop the simple metal rounds. "Direct hit," Olivia reported. "Enemy vessel is heavily damaged." The Zarkonian fleet reacted with confusion. Their ships turned in different directions, trying to find their attacker. Their sensors, designed to detect energy weapons, had trouble finding the Defender. "Launch fighters," Frank ordered. "Target pattern Alpha." Dozens of human fighters shot out from the Defender's launch base. They flew in tight formations, weaving between asteroids. Each fighter carried missiles and small railguns. On the Zarkonian flagship, Admiral Vexthor watched with growing anger. How are they hitting us? Find them. His officers struggled to track the human ships. Their weapons are not showing on our sensors, Admiral. They're using some kind of primitive projectile technology. Primitive, Vexthor snarled. They just disabled one of our cruisers. Send out our fighters. Destroy them. Zarkonian fighters launched from their carriers. They were sleek and fast, with energy weapons that glowed bright blue. They outnumbered the human fighters 2-1. Sergeant Kyle Phillips led the human fighter squadrons. Remember your training, he told his pilots over the radio. Use the asteroids for cover. Make them chase you, then double back. The human fighters broke into smaller groups. They used tactics from old air battles on Earth, diving behind asteroids when pursued, then ambushing their hunters. The Zarkonian pilots, unused to fighting around obstacles, struggled to keep up. Back on the Defender, Chief Engineer Patricia Nelson worked frantically in the engine room. We're routing power to the forward railguns, she reported. We can fire again in 30 seconds. Good, Frank said. Target their command ship. The Defender moved out from its hiding place, circling around a large asteroid. Its railguns fired again, sending massive rounds toward the Zarkonian flagship. The alien ship's shields flared and failed. One round hit its engine section, causing a blue explosion. They're hurt but still moving, Olivia said. Their fleet is regrouping. They're going to make a coordinated attack. Frank nodded. This was the dangerous part. All fighters, return to the ship. Prepare for Phase 2. In space, the fighter battle continued. Human pilots used every trick they knew. When one Zarkonian fighter chased a human ship around an asteroid, 3 human fighters would be waiting on the other side. The humans were taking losses, but they were inflicting heavy damage. On the Coalition observation ships near Earth, the alien watchers were stunned. The humans are winning? One said in disbelief. How is this possible? Another observer studied the battle data. They're using the asteroids as weapons and shields. See how their fighters work together. And their main ship's weapons, they're not energy-based at all. They're physical projectiles moving at incredible speeds. But that's so. Basic, the first observer said. Basic, yes, agreed the second. But effective. The Zarkonian fleet reorganized and began a coordinated attack on the Defender. Energy beams struck the carrier's hull, leaving scorch marks but failing to penetrate the thick armor. Damage report, Frank called out as the ship shook. Outer armor plating holding, Patricia replied from engineering. But we can't take too many more hits like that. Dr. Carter stepped forward. It's time for the special weapon, Captain. Frank nodded. All hands, braced for maneuver. Helm, take us deeper into the asteroid field. The Defender turned and accelerated toward a denser part of the asteroid belt. The Zarkonian ships followed, firing continuously. They think we're running, Olivia said with a small smile. Let them think that, Frank replied. Sergeant Phillips, get your boarding teams ready. In the ship's marine bay, Sergeant Phillips and his team checked their equipment. They wore heavy space armor and carried simple but effective weapons. Boarding teams? One Marine asked. We're going to board an alien ship. Phillips nodded. They never expected humans to fight this way. Old-fashioned, they'd call it. The Defender continued deeper into the asteroid field, leading the Zarkonian fleet into a trap that none of them saw coming. The Defender moved deeper into the asteroid field. Large space rocks floated all around them. Captain Frank Miller watched the tactical display as the Zarkonian ships followed, exactly as he had planned. They're taking the bait, Olivia said. All enemy ships are in pursuit. Frank nodded. Dr. Carter, is the special weapon ready? Alan Carter stood at a console near the back of the bridge. Ready, Captain. But we only have one shot at this. Understood. Frank turned to communications. Send the signal to the mining stations. Throughout the asteroid belt, small unmanned stations activated. They had been placed there years ago, officially for mining operations. Now they served another purpose. Mining stations responding. Ben Harris reported from communications. Ready on your mark. Frank watched as the last Zarkonian ship entered the target zone. Now, the mining stations fired powerful electromagnetic pulses through the asteroid field. The pulses were harmless to the Defender, which had been designed to withstand them. The Zarkonian ships, however, relied on sensitive electronic systems. On the Zarkonian flagship, alarms blared as systems failed. What's happening? Admiral Vexthor demanded. Some kind of pulse weapon, an officer replied. Our shields are down. Weapons systems failing. We're losing power. The EMP wave washed over the entire Zarkonian fleet. Their advanced systems, so much more sophisticated than human technology, were also much more vulnerable. All enemy ships showing power fluctuations, Olivia reported. Their weapons are offline. Engines at minimal capacity. Frank stood up. Launch boarding shuttles. Target their command ship. From the Defender, small armored shuttles shot out toward the crippled Zarkonian flagship. Inside each shuttle, Marines in battle armor prepared their weapons. Sergeant Phillips addressed his troops. Remember, we want to capture, not kill. Take the bridge and engine room. Secure the Admiral if possible. The shuttles attached to the hull of the Zarkonian flagship like remoras on a shark. The Marines used cutting tools to create entry points, then pushed inside. On the Defender's bridge, Susan Watson approached Frank. Captain, I've been analyzing the raw materials in these asteroids. We can use them. For what? Susan smiled. The Defender isn't just a carrier. It's a mobile factory. If we can gather enough raw materials, we can repair damage and even build more ammunition. Frank looked surprised. You mean the ship can make its own supplies? That's what makes it special, Alan explained. Most alien ships depend on supply lines. We designed the Defender to operate alone for months or even years. Over the communication system, Sergeant Phillips' voice came through. Boarding Team Alpha reporting. We've secured the engine room. Team Beta is approaching the bridge. Frank turned back to the tactical display. What about the other enemy ships? Still disabled, Olivia reported. Their backup systems are coming online, but slowly. We have maybe 20 minutes before they can fight again. Then let's use that time. Launch the harvester drones. Target the smallest asteroids for processing. Small robotic craft left the Defender, heading for nearby asteroids. They attached to the Space Rocks and began breaking them down, extracting metals and other useful materials. On the Coalition observation ships, the aliens watched in amazement. What are they doing now? One asked. Another observer zoomed in with their sensors. They're mining. In the middle of a battle. This is unheard of. And look at their boarding parties. A third added. Physical invasion of enemy vessels. So primitive and yet effective, the first observer finished. The humans fight like no species we've encountered. Back on the Zarkonian flagship, Sergeant Phillips and his team reached the bridge. They breached the doors and rushed in, weapons ready. Admiral Vexthor stood by his command chair, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. Impossible, the Admiral said. How could primitives defeat our advanced fleet? Phillips lowered his weapon. Sometimes the old ways work best. The bridge is secure, Captain, he reported over his radio. We've captured Admiral Vexthor. Frank's voice replied, Excellent. Tell the Admiral we'd like to discuss terms. As Phillips secured the Zarkonian officers, he couldn't help smiling behind his helmet. The aliens had called humans primitive. They had laughed at Earth's technology. They weren't laughing now. Admiral Vexthor sat in the meeting room of the U.S. Defender, his gray-blue hands bound with simple metal restraints. Across the table, Captain Frank Miller watched him calmly. Your ships are disabled, Frank said. Your crew is contained. It's over, Admiral. Vex Thor's yellow eyes narrowed. One battle does not end a war. Human. The Zarkonian Empire has thousands of ships. We will return with a fleet 10 times this size. Perhaps, Frank agreed. But now we know your weaknesses, and you've seen only a fraction of what we can do. The door opened, and Dr. Alan Carter entered with Commander Susan Watson. They carried data tablets showing the status of the Zarkonian fleet. 5 of their ships are completely disabled, Susan reported. The others are regaining some systems, but not weapons or shields. Alan set his tablet on the table, showing images of the Defender harvesting materials from asteroids. The repair drones have already fixed most of our damage. We're at 90% combat readiness. Vex Thor stared at the images. You're repairing. In the middle of battle. How is this possible? Frank smiled slightly. You called our technology primitive. Maybe it is by your standards. But we built this ship to survive. Admiral. To adapt. All alien technology is connected, Alan explained. Your shields, weapons, engines, they all rely on the same systems. One good hit, and everything fails. Our systems are separate, independent. If one part breaks, the rest keeps working. The ship's communication system activated. Captain, this is Lieutenant Martinez. The Coalition ships are requesting permission to approach. They want to observe. Frank exchanged looks with his officers. Let them come. Show them everything. On the Defender's main viewing screen, the Coalition ships appeared. They moved cautiously through the asteroid field, past the disabled Zarkonian vessels. Ambassador Lisa Brown joined them in the meeting room. The Coalition Council is in emergency session, she reported. They're reconsidering their position on the Zarkonian conflict. Vex Thor laughed bitterly. Of course they are. They always support the winner. 3 Coalition representatives were escorted onto the bridge of the Defender. They looked around with undisguised curiosity, touching the metal consoles and studying the simple displays. You defeated a Zarkonian battle fleet with this, one asked in disbelief. Olivia smiled from her tactical station. Sometimes simple is better than complex. The Coalition representatives were shown around the ship. They saw the fighter bays, where damaged craft were already being repaired. They visited the manufacturing section, where asteroid materials were being turned into new railgun rounds. Most surprising to them was the medical bay, where injured crew members were being treated with a mix of advanced medicine and old-fashioned surgery. You cut into your wounded? A representative asked, horrified. The ship's doctor nodded. When needed. Not everything can be fixed with energy fields and nanites. Back in the meeting room, Frank presented Vex Thor with a document. These are our terms. The Zarkonian Empire will withdraw from Earth's space. You will return all human prisoners, and you will pay reparations for the damage you've caused. And if I refuse? Vex Thor asked. Frank pointed to a screen showing the Defender's fighters surrounding the remaining Zarkonian ships. Then we finish what you started. But I think you're smarter than that, Admiral. Slowly, reluctantly, Vex Thor signed the document. As he was led away, he looked back at Frank. You surprised us this time, human. It won't happen again. Frank nodded. We're counting on that. We'll have more surprises waiting. After the Admiral left, the Coalition representatives approached Frank. The Council wishes to discuss a military alliance with Earth, one said. Your unique approach to warfare could be valuable. Frank smiled. We'd be happy to share our primitive technology. As the Defender began its journey back to Earth, the crew gathered on the observation deck. Through the large windows, they could see their home planet, blue and beautiful against the blackness of space. They laughed at our ship, Susan said quietly. Called it primitive. Sometimes old ways are best, Frank replied. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've had a lot of practice. The Supercarrier continued toward Earth, carrying with it the beginning of humanity's new reputation among the stars.